Imagine a high-tension power line running from a power plant to a nearby city. When the insulation on that wire is thick and intact, the electricity flows silently and efficiently, reaching its destination without losing a single watt of energy. But if you strip away that rubber coating, the wire begins to hiss. It sparks against the metal casing. It hums with a frantic, uncontrolled vibration, and the signal that was supposed to be a steady stream of power turns into a chaotic mess of electrical noise. This exact same process is happening inside your head right now. Your auditory nerve, the primary cable that carries sound from your inner ear to your brain, is wrapped in a biological insulation called the myelin sheath. When this sheath is healthy, you experience the world in high-definition silence. But when it begins to thin and fray, a process often triggered by invisible metabolic shifts, your brain begins to hear the sparks of your own nervous system. You perceive this as a constant ringing, a relentless hiss, or a high-pitched whine that never seems to turn off. Most people spend decades trying to mask this sound with white noise or fans, but they are simply trying to drown out the noise of a damaged wire. The real solution isn't to cover the sound. It's to rebuild the insulation. The medical establishment often treats tinnitus as a mystery, a ghost in the machine that has no physical cause. They tell you to get used to it, as if your brain is just playing a trick on you. But there is nothing imaginary about the structural decay of a nerve. The cells in your inner ear, the ones responsible for translating vibrations into electrical impulses, are the most sensitive in your entire body. They require more energy and more protection than almost any other tissue. When the protective shield around these nerves starts to break down, the electrical signal leaks. This leakage is what creates the phantom sounds you hear. It's not that there is a sound coming from the outside, it's that your auditory nerve is literally short-circuiting against itself. This insulation doesn't just disappear on its own. It is stripped away by a process of biological friction, often caused by a lack of one specific, fat-soluble nutrient that the modern diet has almost entirely forgotten. If you don't provide the raw materials to patch these leaks, the hissing will only grow louder as the wire becomes more exposed. You can actually see how this cellular patching process works and how to kickstart the repair of your auditory shield by following the protocol at the link in the description and the pinned comment below. The nutrient we are talking about isn't your standard vitamin that you find in a cheap grocery store bottle. Most people have heard of vitamin B1 or thiamine, but they are taking the water-soluble version that barely makes it past the digestive tract. The auditory nerve is protected by a blood-brain barrier and a fatty membrane that repels water-soluble nutrients. To actually reach the site of the damage, you need the fat-soluble version, known as benfotiamina. This is the only form of the nutrient capable of penetrating the fatty layers of the myelin sheath to stop the internal fire that causes the ringing. When benfotiamina enters the system, it acts like a high-speed repair crew for your nerves. It activates an enzyme called transketolase, which mops up the toxic byproducts of sugar and oxygen that are currently eating away at your ear's insulation. Without this specific nutrient, your nerves remain in a state of constant, low-grade inflammation, vibrating with an intensity that the brain interprets as a permanent alarm. Think about the last time you felt a sudden spike in the volume of your ringing. Maybe it happened after a stressful day, or a meal high in processed carbohydrates. In those moments, your body's demand for thiamine skyrocketed, leaving your auditory nerve completely undefended. When thiamine levels drop, the power plants in your ear cells, the mitochondria, begin to fail. They can no longer produce the energy needed to keep the insulation thick and strong. The nerve becomes leaky, and the short-circuiting intensifies. This is why the sound often feels like it's coming from the center of your head, rather than just your ears. It is a systemic failure of your neural insulation. Benfotiamina doesn't just mask the sound. It goes into the wiring and provides the stability needed for the nerve to stop firing at random. It's like putting a fresh coat of high-grade rubber over a wire that has been sparking for years. The reason most treatments fail is that they ignore the viscosity of the problem. If your blood is even slightly elevated in glucose, it becomes abrasive. It acts like sandpaper on the microscopic vessels that feed your auditory nerve. This mechanical friction creates heat and oxidative stress that melts the myelin sheath over time. You might not be diabetic, but glucose excursions, those little spikes after a snack, are enough to keep the inflammation alive. Benfotiamina is the only nutrient proven to block the 3 major biochemical pathways that lead to this type of nerve damage. It acts as a shield, preventing the sandpaper effect from reaching the delicate insulation of your ear. By clearing out the metabolic sludge and reinforcing the myelin, you allow the nerve to finally return to its baseline state of quiet. To understand how to combine this fat-soluble shield with the specific cofactors needed for total nerve regeneration, you should look at the strategic repair guide linked in the description. The auditory nerve is like a highway. When the pavement is smooth, cars move fast and quietly. But when the pavement is full of potholes and cracks, every car that passes creates a loud thud and a vibration that echoes through the entire area. Your tinnitus is the sound of your neural highway being full of potholes. Each time a signal tries to pass through a section of the nerve where the insulation is thin, it creates a thud that your brain perceives as a whine. The more potholes you have, the more constant the noise becomes. Most people are told that these potholes are permanent, that the road can never be fixed. But the body is constantly trying to rebuild its tissue. It just lacks the specific bricks and mortar required for the auditory system. Benfotiamina provides those bricks. It stabilizes the cellular environment so that the body can finally fill in the cracks and smooth out the road. If you've ever felt a sense of ear fullness or pressure along with the ringing, that's a clear sign that the inflammation has reached a critical point. The tissues are swelling because they are struggling to process the metabolic waste that is trapped inside the ear's tiny chambers. When the insulation is damaged, the nerve cells also lose their ability to regulate minerals like potassium and sodium. This creates a literal electrical storm inside your cochlea. It's not just a sound. It's a physical state of agitation. By introducing the right lipophilic nutrients, you aren't just taking a supplement. You are changing the chemistry of the fluid that surrounds your nerves. You are telling the electrical storm to calm down. You are giving the gatekeeper in your brain the silence it needs to recalibrate the volume knob. There is a direct correlation between how long you've had the ringing and how thin your neural insulation has become. In the beginning, the hissing might come and go. This is the stage where the insulation is just starting to fray. But as the years go by and the metabolic stress continues, the sheath becomes so thin that the sparking is constant. This is when the brain starts to hardwire the sound, making it even harder to eliminate. This is why time is of the essence. You have to catch the decay while there is still enough of a foundation to rebuild. Waiting another year means more leaks, more short circuits, and a louder, more permanent sound. You can stop the erosion of your auditory shield and start the 2-week rebuilding process by accessing the specialized protocol at the link below this video. Most people are surprised to learn that their hearing loss isn't actually a loss of hearing, but a loss of clarity caused by this internal noise. If you find yourself asking people to repeat themselves or struggling to hear in a crowded room, it's likely because the sparks from your damaged auditory nerve are drowning out the external sounds. It's like trying to listen to a whisper while someone is shouting in the same room. When you rebuild the insulation, the internal shouting stops. The signal becomes clear again, and your brain doesn't have to work as hard to interpret what it's hearing. This reduces the brain fog and exhaustion that often accompanies chronic tinnitus. You aren't losing your hearing, you are losing your silence. The auditory nerve doesn't live in a vacuum. It is part of a larger network that includes your vestibular system and your brain's emotional centers. This is why chronic ringing often leads to dizziness, anxiety, and even depression. The constant electrical agitation keeps your nervous system in a state of high alert, as if there is a predator nearby that you can't see. Your body is stuck in fight or flight mode because it can't find a way to turn off the alarm. Rebuilding the protective shield of the nerve is the only way to signal to your entire body that the danger is over. It allows your nervous system to finally downshift into a state of rest and repair. Without this structural fix, your body will stay in a state of high stress indefinitely, further depleting the very nutrients you need to heal. It takes about 14 days for the initial layers of neural insulation to begin stabilizing when the right nutrients are present in the correct concentrations. This isn't a miracle timeline. It's the standard biological rate of cellular turnover and enzyme activation. During the first few days, you might not notice a change in the sound, but behind the scenes, the transketolase enzyme is starting to clear out the metabolic debris. By day 7, the oxidative stress levels begin to drop, and the electrical leakage starts to slow down. By day 14, the sparks are less frequent, and the brain begins to realize that it no longer needs to keep the volume knob at maximum. This is the moment when the ringing starts to fade into the background. allowing you to focus on the world around you once again. The modern diet is a desert for nerve repair nutrients. We eat food that is stripped of its natural oils and loaded with synthetic additives that actually block the absorption of thiamine. Even if you think you're eating healthy, the high levels of phytic acid in grains and the tannins in tea and coffee can prevent your auditory nerve from getting the protection it needs. This is why targeted, fat-soluble supplementation is so critical. You are fighting against an environment that is designed to strip away your neural insulation. You have to be intentional about providing the shielding that your ears are starving for. The longer you rely on a standard diet to fix a specialized neural problem, the longer the ringing will persist. Think of your auditory system as a high-performance athlete. If that athlete doesn't get the right fuel, they will eventually break down and get injured. Your ears have been running a marathon for years without the proper recovery nutrients. They are exhausted, inflamed, and damaged. They are screaming for a break. Providing benfotiamina and its supporting cofactors is like giving that athlete the recovery they need to get back in the game. It's the ultimate act of biological self-care. It's about more than just stopping a sound. It's about restoring the integrity of your most sensitive sensory system. You deserve to live in a world where the only sounds you hear are the ones you choose to listen to. If you've tried every supplement on the market and nothing has worked, it's probably because those products were water-soluble and couldn't actually reach the fatty tissues of the inner ear. They were literally being washed out of your system before they could do any good. This is the missing piece of the puzzle. The lipophilic nature of the insulation nutrient is what allows it to stay in the tissues long enough to initiate the repair. It's not about how much you take. It's about how much actually gets to the nerve. This is the science of bioavailability. And it's the difference between failure and success in neurological repair. You can find the exact delivery method needed to ensure these nutrients hit their target by clicking the link in the description. As you sit here listening to this, the sparks in your ears are continuing to fire. Every second that goes by without proper insulation is another second of wear and tear on your auditory nerve. But you have the power to change the chemistry of your inner ear starting right now. You can choose to stop the erosion and start the rebuilding process. You can move from a state of frustration and noise to a state of clarity and silence. The path is clear. The nutrient is identified, and the repair protocol is waiting for you. Don't let another day go by in a world of static. Rebuild your auditory shield and reclaim the silence that is rightfully yours. The journey back to a quiet mind starts with a single decision to fix the wiring. The 14-day clock can start today if you take the necessary action to protect your nerves. Your ears have been warning you for long enough. It's time to finally give them the insulation they've been begging for. Visit the link in the description or the pinned comment and start the repair now. Your future of silence is waiting on the other side of this metabolic shift.